Sophia Armstrong stared at her phone, her fingers trembling as she typed a message she never thought she'd send again. Caleb, I really hate to ask this, but I need 30 pounds for Emily's formula. I get paid on Friday. I promise I'll send it back. Her thumb hovered only a moment before she hit send. She dropped the phone onto the worn-out couch beneath her, sighing deeply as the weight of yet another impossible day bore down on her. From the baby monitor on the side table came the soft whimpers of 6-month-old Emily's breathing. Sophia had exactly £1.79 in her bank account. No formula. The last bottle had been diluted far more than it should have been. The message was humiliating, yes, but pride didn't matter when your baby was hungry. Across the city, high above Canary Wharf in a glass-wrapped office, Kingston Khalifa's phone buzzed. The 42-year-old CEO of Khalifa Innovations barely glanced at the screen, expecting another update from his executive team about the billion-pound merger he'd been navigating. But instead, his brow furrowed at the unfamiliar message. A baby's formula? He sat up, dragging a hand through his thick salt and pepper hair. This wasn't a message meant for him. That much was clear. Only a handful of people even had this private number. A missed dial. And yet, something about the desperation in those few lines rooted him to the spot. Back in her modest flat in Peckham, Sophia's phone buzzed again. She picked it up, her heart dropping as she read the reply. I think you have the wrong number. I'm not Caleb. Mortification rushed through her like fire. She tapped frantically. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. That was meant for my brother. Please ignore it. Tossing the phone aside, she buried her face in her hands. Could this day possibly get any worse? But Kingston didn't delete the text. Something about it gnawed at him, the mention of a baby, the raw vulnerability. It was a welcome break from the ruthless negotiations and posturing that had filled his week. After a moment's hesitation, he typed, Is your baby going to be okay? Sophia blinked in disbelief when she saw the new message. A stranger? Why would he care? Her instincts told her to ignore him, but sleepless nights, stress, and the sheer weight of motherhood dulled her usual caution. We'll manage, she replied coolly. Sorry again for bothering you. His next reply came quickly. I could help. No strings attached. Sophia scoffed aloud. In her experience, there were always strings. Thanks, but I don't take money from strangers. Smart policy, Kingston responded. I'm Kingston. Now I'm not a stranger. What formula does Emily need? Sophia paused. Something about the name felt vaguely familiar, but she couldn't place it. Her thumb hovered over the screen. Why would a stranger, even one polite enough to offer help, care at all? Meanwhile, in his sleek penthouse office, Kingston gazed out at the dusky London skyline. Why was he doing this? If you asked his assistant, she'd say he was procrastinating. His ex-wife would claim it was another emotional impulse. Maybe both were right. Still, he typed, Let's just say I've been fortunate. I remember what it's like not to be. Sophia exhaled slowly, staring at the dim corner where Emily's crib sat. Sleep was a distant memory. She'd been running on coffee and anxiety for weeks. Infamil gentlis, she finally typed. It's expensive, but it's the only one Emily can tolerate. She's colicky. There was a long pause. Then, what's your Monzo or Revolut handle? She hesitated. Was she seriously considering this? But she could always block him if it got weird. With a deep breath, she sent her Monzo link. Seconds later, her screen lit up. £300 received from Kingston Khalifa. Sophia's eyes widened. This is too much. I was only asking for £30. Call it an advance for the next few months, Kingston responded. One less thing to worry about. The tears came before she could stop them. She hadn't cried when she'd lost her job at the firm. Not when Caleb, her only sibling, moved to Birmingham for work. Not even when her landlord slid the final eviction warning under her door. But this moment of kindness from a stranger, undid her. Thank you, she typed, voice catching in her throat. You're welcome, Sophia. Take care of Emily. Later that evening, after a short trip to Tesco, with a bag full of formula and groceries, Sophia paused in her hallway, suddenly chilled. She never told him her daughter's name. The next morning, her phone buzzed again. "Hope you and Emily slept better. I have a proposition for you." Sophia's stomach tightened. Here it comes, she thought. The strings. "What kind of proposition?" she asked cautiously. "Professional," Kingston replied. "Not personal. I run a tech firm, Khalifa Innovations. We need someone with accounting experience for a short-term project." "Your brother Caleb mentioned you're looking for work." Her breath caught. "How do you know Caleb? How do you know I'm an accountant?" she typed, eyes darting to her social media, still all private. "Your number's nearly identical to Caleb Armstrong's. He's in my HR department. When I mentioned a wrong number text, he figured it out. He speaks highly of you." Sophia stared at the wall, trying to sort through the mix of relief and suspicion. This could all be coincidence. Couldn't it? "Completely coincidence," Kingston followed up, as if reading her thoughts. "But maybe a fortunate one for both of us. We need help reconciling accounts before a merger. 3-month contract, potential for something long-term. Interested in interviewing?" Sophia leaned back against the wall, clutching Emily to her chest. Could she really afford to turn this down? The glass tower of Khalifa Innovations rose like a crystal monolith above Canary Wharf. As Sophia Armstrong stood at its base, the morning sun gleaming off its panels, she adjusted the strap of Emily's baby carrier and smoothed her second-hand blazer. It was neat, professional, and thrifted, the kind of look that said, "I'm trying," even when life had handed you nothing but setbacks. Inside the sleek marble lobby, a sharply dressed black security guard looked up from the front desk and smiled. "Miss Armstrong?" he asked before she could say a word. She nodded, surprised. "Mr. Khalifa's expecting you. You're headed to the top floor. Rita will meet you by the lift." The sheer efficiency of the welcome caught Sophia off guard. She had been to job interviews before, dingy waiting rooms, awkward receptionist exchanges, long waits in silence. But this felt like she'd accidentally walked into the life of someone else. A few seconds later, a poised woman in her mid-50s, with perfectly pinned braids and graceful confidence, approached her. "I'm Rita," she said warmly, offering a hand. "Right this way." Sophia followed Rita into a lift lined with mirrored walls, trying not to fidget as the numbers rose. This isn't real, she kept thinking. This is some strange dream, or a prank Caleb set up. But as they reached the top floor and stepped into a sunlit corridor, her doubts started to crack. Rita led her past open-plan workspaces filled with bustling staff and whispered, "You'll be meeting Mr. Khalifa in his private office. He'll join you shortly. Would you like water or coffee?" "Water, please," Sophia said, trying not to sound as overwhelmed as she felt. She lowered Emily's carrier onto a plush leather couch in the waiting area of the corner office. The baby, thankfully, was still asleep. As Rita left, Sophia glanced around. The space was modern but inviting. Bookshelves lined one wall, a warm-toned guitar rested in a corner, and family photos adorned the dark wooden desk. Not at all the cold, impersonal lair she'd expected from a billionaire tech mogul. "You've got a peaceful sleeper there." The voice was deep, smooth, and came from the doorway. Sophia turned sharply. There he was, Kingston Khalifa. Taller than she imagined, dressed in a tailored navy suit that complemented his brown skin and silver-streaked beard. Kingston carried the quiet authority of someone who had learned to control chaos, both business and personal. "Mr. Khalifa," she said quickly, standing. "Thank you for seeing me." "Kingston," he corrected, offering a brief but firm handshake. "Thanks for coming in on such short notice." There was a pause. They both seemed to silently acknowledge how strange the situation truly was. "I suppose I should explain," he began, sitting across from her. "The text yesterday, I don't usually respond to things like that." "I don't usually send them to strangers," she countered, folding her hands in her lap. "I'm still not entirely comfortable with what happened." Kingston nodded slowly, appreciating her honesty. "It was a specific kind of day," he said, glancing toward the window. Yesterday was the anniversary of my daughter's passing. Sophia's heart twisted. I'm so sorry, she whispered. She would have turned 8, he said, his voice low. Leukemia. 3 years of fighting. 3 years of hospitals in hope and disappointment. He looked toward Emily, who stirred slightly in her sleep. When your message came through, it felt like, I don't know, a second chance to help where I couldn't before. Sophia softened. The suspicion that had been coiled tightly in her chest began to loosen. This wasn't some setup, not a trap, maybe just a strange moment of grace, born from pain and timing. And the job? She asked carefully. Completely legitimate, Kingston assured her. After I told Caleb about the message, he realized who you were immediately. He said you'd been applying, but no one was calling back. He didn't know how bad things were, she murmured. I didn't want to burden him. Family pride, Kingston said with a slight smile. I get it. He handed her a sleek folder. This is the contract, 3-month term, full pay and benefits. We're preparing for a merger, and we need someone to sort through anomalies in our financial records. Sophia scanned the document. The pay was generous, more than her last full-time job at her accounting firm. The benefits included on-site childcare, which felt almost too good to be true. This is a lot for a temp role, she said cautiously. We pay for quality, Kingston said simply. And I've seen your resume. Caleb gave me a copy. Top of your class, Deloitte experience. You're not just qualified, you're a catch. Sophia was startled by the compliment. Before she could respond, Rita returned with a bottle of chilled water and a polite nod. Once they were alone again, Sophia turned serious. Why didn't you just say who you were in the text? Kingston took a sip of his coffee, eyes steady. Would you have believed me if I said, Hi, I'm a CEO. Let me help you? She let out a short laugh. Probably not. And truthfully, this was unorthodox. The board would have asked too many questions if I'd brought you in personally. But I don't believe in bureaucracy when someone needs help. Just then, Emily stirred. Sophia reached instinctively for her bag and bottle. Would you prefer a private space? Kingston asked, nodding toward a nearby door. There's a small kitchenette with a bit more privacy. Grateful, Sophia stood and slipped into the warm, softly lit room. As she prepared the bottle, her mind spun. A billionaire CEO, a wrong number, a job offer she hadn't applied for. Was this a dream or a test? When she returned to the office, Kingston was finishing a tense call. His voice dropped just before he hung up. I don't care what Eric says. We're not selling that division. I gave those employees my word. He saw her and immediately softened. Sorry about that. Merger drama. No worries, she said, settling Emily on her lap. You're really good with her, he added gently. I had to be, she replied, eyes fixed on her daughter. Her father left when I was 3 months pregnant. It's just been the two of us. Kingston's gaze hardened. His loss. The interview shifted to logistics. Hours, responsibilities. Confidentiality. The more they talked, the more Sophia's instincts began to settle. Then Kingston said something unexpected. The daycare's full, but until a spot opens up, I'd like you to work here, in my private suite. There's a small conference room you can use, and Emily would be welcome. Sophia blinked. That's unusually kind. Kingston gave her a small smile. We need your skills, and this merger is delicate. I need someone I can trust, close. Just then, Rita reappeared. Mr. Khalifa, your 10:30 is waiting. Kingston rose, then offered his hand again. So, Sophia Armstrong, do we have a deal? Sophia hesitated for just a second. Then she stood, shook his hand and said, Yes, thank you. And one more thing, Kingston added as he moved toward the door. The 300 pounds. That was a gift, not an advance. You don't owe me anything. Before she could protest, he was gone. And for the first time in a long time, Sophia stood in a room that made her believe, maybe, just maybe, her life was finally turning a corner. 3 weeks into her new role at Khalifa Innovations, Sophia Armstrong still found herself catching her breath every time she stepped into the top floor. The towering glass views of Canary Wharf, the quiet luxury of the office, the way Rita always greeted her with a warm, "morning, love," it all felt surreal. Each day began the same, a gentle elevator ride to the executive suite, Rita's knowing smile and a fresh cup of coffee, and then Sophia would set Emily down on a soft mat by her desk in the converted conference room Kingston had offered. The once spare space now held a portable crib, colorful toys, and even a rocking chair Rita claimed just showed up one morning. Emily loved it. Sophia was still adjusting. But the work, now that felt familiar and challenging. The merger was no small feat, reconciling accounts across divisions, digging through old data, analyzing layers of financial records. This was the part Sophia could sink her teeth into. Today, she was tracing the paper trail behind a dormant acquisition account from a smaller media subsidiary, one absorbed a year ago. She frowned, her eyes narrowing, as she cross-checked two spreadsheets. "These numbers don't add up," she muttered under her breath, tilting her head as Emily babbled from her mat. Sophia leaned closer to her screen. There were tiny, regular discrepancies, amounts that wouldn't raise eyebrows alone. But when she zoomed out and looked at the 18-month timeline, the pattern sharpened. Someone had been siphoning money in small, coordinated amounts, barely noticeable, easily masked with adjusted entries. But not to her. A knock pulled her attention. She looked up to find Kingston in the doorway, his tie loosened and his usual composure slightly frayed. "Making progress?" he asked, crouching down immediately to greet Emily, who squealed and stretched her arms toward him. "She's going to forget I'm her mother at this rate," Sophia teased, watching Kingston scoop up Emily with a gentleness that caught her off guard. "I doubt that," he said, smiling at the baby. Then his attention returned to Sophia. "Something wrong?" "Yes," she said, swiveling her monitor toward him. "Look at this. These anomalies in the Thompson acquisition accounts. They're too regular to be accidental." Kingston stepped forward, brow furrowing. He scanned the data she highlighted. "How much are we talking?" "About £2.5 million, spread across multiple accounts over the last 18 months. He let out a slow breath, jaw tightening. "You're sure?" Sophia looked him squarely in the eye. "It's why you brought me in, right? To find this exact kind of thing?" A flicker of something crossed Kingston's face. Guilt? Worry? "Yes," he said quietly. "You were brought in for exactly this." Sophia sat back, arms crossed. "So what now?" "I need you to put together a detailed report," Kingston said, straightening. "Every transaction, every pattern. But don't share it with anyone else, not even Caleb." Sophia blinked. "Not even your CFO?" Kingston's face hardened. "Especially not Eric." The room went still. After he left, Sophia stared at the door, mind racing. Why would Kingston want to keep this from the chief financial officer unless... She shook her head. "Don't go making up conspiracy theories," she thought, forcing herself to focus on her notes. But the doubt had been planted. That evening, as Emily drifted to sleep in their newly upgraded flat in South Bank, thanks to her generous salary, Sophia returned to the numbers. She pulled up the larger timeline of all acquisitions and financial reports post-merger. By midnight, her findings were impossible to ignore. The discrepancies began shortly after Eric was appointed CFO. His predecessor's abrupt resignation had seemed unusual at the time, but now it cast a shadow. The next morning, Sophia arrived earlier than usual. She hoped to speak to Kingston before his day filled up with meetings. But his office was dark. A few minutes later, her phone buzzed with a text. "Emergency board meeting. Use the time to finish your report. We'll talk later. K." The vagueness of the message did nothing to ease her rising anxiety. As Emily played quietly, Sophia pored over the accounts again, trying to find something, anything, that might suggest she was wrong. But all the data pointed in the same direction. Just before lunch, the sound of polished shoes clicking on marble pulled her out of her concentration. She looked up and froze. Eric stood in her doorway, tall, smooth, sharply dressed in an expensive gray suit and silk tie, He smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Miss Armstrong," he said evenly, "burning the midnight oil?" Sophia quickly minimized her screen. "Just preparing reports for the merger." Interesting how Mr. Khalifa chose to keep you tucked away here," Eric said, glancing around the plush space. His tone dripped with unspoken suggestion. "Bringing your child to work, very accommodating." Sophia stiffened. "Kingston values efficiency. I've uncovered a few issues that needed addressing." "I'm sure you have," Eric replied, voice still pleasant but sharp beneath the surface. "But just a word of advice. Khalifa Innovations has been running fine for years. Temporary staff shouldn't get too comfortable." The message was clear. She was a threat, and he wanted her gone. As soon as he left, Sophia sat frozen, heart pounding. A few minutes later, her phone rang. An unfamiliar number. "Sophia Armstrong speaking," she said, trying to mask her nerves. "Miss Armstrong, this is Detective Clifford from the Financial Crimes Division. We're investigating irregularities in Khalifa Innovations' financial accounts. I'd like to ask you a few questions." Sophia's chest tightened. I'm not sure what I can tell you." "Perhaps we should speak in person," the detective said. "This afternoon, if you're available." Sophia sat in stunned silence long after the call ended. The investigation, the confrontation with Eric, something very dangerous was brewing, and now she was right in the middle of it. She looked at Emily asleep in her cot beside her desk, and she knew she had to protect her daughter, no matter what. By 3 p.m., Sophia Armstrong was barely holding it together. She had triple-checked her report, every number, every date, every siphoned pound from Khalifa Innovations accounts. The discrepancies weren't just mistakes. They were deliberate. And now she was headed to the local office of the Financial Crimes Division to discuss them. Detective Clifford hadn't said much on the phone, but his tone was clipped and official. That alone had shaken Sophia. Was she being questioned as a whistleblower or as a suspect? At 3:15 sharp, Kingston Khalifa finally returned to the top floor. Sophia didn't wait. She intercepted him the moment he entered, her voice low but urgent. "Kingston, I need a word. Now." He looked startled at first, then gestured for her to follow. The moment the door to his office clicked shut behind them, Sophia let the words spill. "The police called me, the Financial Crimes Division. They're asking questions, Kingston, about you, about me." He froze, his face pale. "They've moved faster than I thought." "You knew this was coming?" she asked, eyes wide. "And you didn't warn me?" "I thought we had more time," he said, running a hand down his jaw. Eric. He's trying to make his move." Sophia's pulse jumped. "You think Eric is setting you up?" "I know he is," Kingston said grimly. "Sophia, there's something I need to show you. Something I should have told you earlier." He crossed to his desk and pulled open a locked drawer. From it, he retrieved a thick folder, stuffed with transaction records, email printouts, and internal memos. He laid it on the table between them. "I haven't been completely honest about why I hired you," he said quietly, "but I swear to you, everything else, including the help, the accommodations for Emily, even the way I feel about you, none of that was fake." Sophia's mind reeled. "What do you mean, not honest? You said the message was a mistake." "It was. The text was genuine. You dialed the wrong number, and I wasn't supposed to get that message. But once I realized who you were, I acted." Sophia blinked. "Acted? How?" "I've been investigating internal theft at Khalifa Innovations for 6 months, Kingston said, locking eyes with her. "I couldn't trust anyone in the senior team. Eric's hands are all over this embezzlement. I needed someone from the outside, someone smart with no ties to the company." Sophia felt like the ground beneath her had just shifted. "You used me." "I recruited you," he corrected gently. "Caleb mentioned you to HR months ago. Said his sister was one of the best forensic accountants he knew, but had been struggling since Emily came. When I realized who had texted me by mistake, I saw an opportunity." Sophia stared at him, stunned. "You manipulated me," she whispered. "You sent money to trap me into a role I didn't apply for. You used my daughter's needs to get what you wanted." No, Kingston said quickly, voice rising with urgency. I gave you a job you were more than qualified for, and I kept you close because I needed someone I could trust. Yes, I made the first move for strategic reasons, but everything since has been real. Before Sophia could respond, Rita burst through the door, something she had never done before. Oh, Kingston, she said, her voice shaking. They're here. Board security and police. They've got a warrant. Sophia froze. For what? Rita's eyes met hers, wide and horrified. They're accusing you both of embezzlement. Sophia staggered back, clutching her chest. That's not possible. I'm the one who found the discrepancies. Kingston turned to Rita. Take her, now. Use the private elevator and get her out, the safe house. Sophia blinked. What? Kingston, if you stay, they'll separate you from Emily while you're being questioned, he said, already ushering her toward the bookcase. Eric's trying to bury us both. He knows you found the evidence. We need to get you out before they can twist this any further. Rita moved swiftly, grabbing Emily's carrier and the files Sophia had been working on. You'll come too, right? Sophia asked, her voice cracking. I have to stay, Kingston said. I have allies on the board, but I can't protect you from inside if you're arrested. Please, trust me one more time. Sophia hesitated, then nodded. Rita opened the hidden door behind the bookshelf, revealing a narrow private corridor leading to a concealed lift. As they descended in silence, Sophia clutched Emily tightly to her chest. Her heart was pounding, not from fear alone, but from the realization that she was now entangled in something far bigger than she'd ever imagined. When they reached the basement garage, a black SUV waited with a discreet driver already holding the back door open. Rita helped her inside, passed over a phone, and said softly, Call only the number saved. He'll reach out when it's safe. And then the vehicle pulled away, leaving the towering glass of Khalifa Innovations behind them, as the woman who had been mistaken for a fraud unknowingly held the key to exposing one of the biggest financial crimes in London's corporate history. The safe house was nothing like Sophia had expected. She thought it would be cold, sterile, some forgotten property with boarded-up windows and dusty furniture. But instead, the flat in Islington was cozy, modest, and surprisingly well-equipped. Rita, true to form, had thought of everything: diapers, formula, even Emily's favorite giraffe plushie from the office. How she'd managed to pack so quickly, Sophia would never know. The silence inside the flat felt deafening after the chaos. Sophia paced the small living room, still trying to process everything that had happened. Emily was asleep again, this time in a travel crib that had somehow appeared in the middle of the room like magic. You seem very prepared for this, Sophia finally said, glancing over at Rita, who was calmly unpacking a bag of groceries in the tiny kitchen. Rita's expression was neutral, but her eyes betrayed concern. Kingston's always been careful. When he first suspected someone was skimming off the top, he didn't know how deep it went. We've been preparing, just in case. Sophia leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. And what about me? Was I part of the plan too? Finding you was a coincidence, Rita said without hesitation. But once Kingston realized who you were and what you could do, yes, he made a choice. You were our safest option. Sophia exhaled shakily and sat down on the armchair beside the crib. I don't know whether to be flattered or furious. Maybe both, Rita said gently, pouring her a cup of tea and placing it beside her. But I know him. Kingston wouldn't have involved you if he didn't believe in your integrity. Sophia stared into the tea, her mind spiraling. Why didn't he just go to the police? He did, Rita said quietly. 6 months ago. But Eric has powerful friends. The first investigation was closed without warning. No charges, no explanations. That's when Kingston realized he'd have to do it himself. Gather hard proof, build a case from the inside. And I found the last piece of the puzzle, Sophia murmured. Rita nodded. You did. Hours passed. The sky outside darkened, and Sophia sat cross-legged on the floor beside Emily's crib, watching her daughter sleep, the rise and fall of her tiny chest grounding her. At midnight, her phone, one Rita had handed her with only one number saved, buzzed. Unknown. Are you safe? Sophia. Yes. Is this Kingston? Kingston. Yes, I had to ditch my regular phone. The police took my devices but released me for now. Sophia. Released? How? They had a warrant. Kingston. Eric's playing it carefully. He's pretending he discovered the embezzlement and pinned it on me. Says you're my accomplice. Sophia. I don't even know what to say. Kingston. Don't say anything yet. Just listen. My contact at the Financial Crimes Division, Agent Maxwell, is meeting us tomorrow, 10 a.m. Sophia's heart pounded. Sophia. Us? Kingston. If you're willing. You found the evidence. You understand the trail better than anyone. She looked over at Emily, still asleep, peaceful and unaware of the storm around her. Sophia. Wouldn't it be safer if I disappeared? Took Emily somewhere far from all of this? Kingston. It would be safer. But it wouldn't be right. And it wouldn't bring justice. Sophia didn't answer immediately. She stood, moved to the window, and looked out over the quiet street. Disappearing was tempting. She had enough money saved now to start over. But if she ran, Eric would win. And Kingston, who had risked everything, would lose everything. Sophia. I'll be there. The next morning, Rita stayed with Emily while Sophia boarded a black cab to a nondescript office block tucked between a bank and a sandwich shop. Kingston was waiting outside in a black coat, the collar turned up, his usual sharpness dulled by the tension in his jaw. You came, he said quietly. I almost didn't, she replied honestly. I wouldn't have blamed you if you hadn't. Inside Agent Maxwell, a tall black woman in her 40s with keen eyes and the no-nonsense presence of someone who had seen it all, welcomed them into a quiet meeting room. Sophia laid out the financial trail, the anomalies, the hidden adjustments, the shell companies, and the connections that tied it all back to Eric. She watched as Maxwell's face shifted from skepticism to sharp interest. This is exactly what we needed, the agent said, flipping through the report. Clear, traceable evidence of embezzlement and laundering. And you're certain the board meeting is today? Yeah, Kingston nodded. At 3, Eric will present fabricated evidence against me. He thinks it's airtight. Good, Maxwell said, a thin smile on her lips. Let him make his move. We'll be there. They ran through the plan. Kingston would go to the board meeting as scheduled. Sophia and the agents would remain in the adjacent room. The moment Eric made his accusations, Sophia would enter and present her findings. As they prepared to leave, Kingston turned to Sophia. If this goes wrong, Rita has instructions. There's an account in your name, enough to get you and Emily out of the country. Sophia stared at him. You thought of everything, didn't you? Except falling for you, he said softly. She didn't respond. Not yet. There were still too many risks, too many unknowns. But as they left the building together, something in her heart whispered that this wasn't just a mission to clear their names. It was the beginning of something deeper. The boardroom on the 28th floor of Khalifa Innovations had never been so tense. A long, glossy oak table dominated the space, surrounded by leather chairs filled with sharp-eyed executives. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the London skyline shimmered beneath a cloud-dusted afternoon. But the beauty outside did little to distract from the storm brewing within. At precisely 3 p.m., Eric Okoye, the CFO with a polished smile and too smooth voice, stood and cleared his throat. Ladies and gentlemen, he began solemnly, distributing thick folders to each board member. What I'm about to share is difficult but necessary. Sophia Armstrong watched from a side room next door, the tension coiling in her chest like a wire pulled too tight. She stood beside Agent Maxwell and 2 other plainclothes officers, clutching her own folder of evidence like a shield. Eric's voice floated through the speakers. It has come to my attention that Kingston Khalifa, our CEO, has been involved in the unauthorized transfer of funds to several offshore accounts. These transactions, I regret to say, were coordinated with the assistance of an outside party, Sophia Armstrong. Sophia's stomach dropped as her name was uttered like a criminal charge. You know, in the boardroom, Kingston sat silently, arms folded, his expression unreadable. Eric continued, the data is in front of you. Bank statements, wire transfers, fabricated reports. It's all there. I am, of course, available to answer any questions. There was a beat of silence. Then Kingston calmly replied, that's a serious accusation, Eric. I didn't come to this conclusion lightly, Eric said, feigning sadness. But financial records don't lie. No, Kingston said, standing. They don't. He turned and nodded toward the door. That was the signal. Agent Maxwell opened the door and stepped inside. And right behind her, shoulders straight, heart pounding, walked Sophia. Murmurs exploded around the table. A few executives stood in surprise. Sophia Armstrong, Eric said coldly, recovering quickly. How convenient. Come to defend your benefactor. Actually, Sophia said, stepping beside Kingston, I'm here to explain how you've been stealing from this company for the past 18 months. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut glass. Sophia opened her folder and laid out the first set of documents. These variances, tiny transactions, cleverly masked, disguised as vendor payments and internal adjustments. Over £2.5 million siphoned into shell corporations, all of which trace back to accounts registered under aliases tied to you, Eric. She turned to the board, meeting each pair of eyes. The pattern begins precisely 3 weeks after Mr. Okoye was promoted to CFO. The former CFO's sudden resignation, also linked to a compliance audit they triggered, one that mysteriously vanished when they left. Maxwell stepped forward and began distributing copies of Sophia's report. The documents you received from Mr. Okoye are falsified, she said calmly. This is the original data, cross-verified with internal audit systems and time-stamped server records. Miss Armstrong has provided us with everything we need to proceed with a criminal case. Eric's face drained of color. I want a lawyer, he muttered. Sophia watched him carefully. He wasn't finished yet. She could see it in his eyes. He was calculating. Then it happened. With a sudden lurch, Eric flung a chair aside and lunged across the boardroom table, straight toward Sophia. Something metallic flashed in his hand. Sophia! Kingston moved without thinking. He grabbed Sophia and pulled her behind him as Eric's arm swung wildly. A shot rang out. It wasn't from Eric. An agent fired once, hitting Eric in the shoulder. He collapsed, groaning, restrained immediately by the officers. Sophia stared at Kingston, her eyes wide. Blood bloomed beneath his shirt sleeve. He winced but remained standing. You're hurt, she whispered, reaching for him. Just a scratch, he muttered, grimacing. But I might need a new shirt. The agents removed Eric from the room. The remaining board members sat in stunned silence. Agent Maxwell stepped forward. Ain, this investigation has been ongoing for months. Today confirms the internal corruption that's jeopardized this company's integrity. We'll be in touch with each of you individually. After the boardroom cleared, Kingston leaned heavily against the wall, his shirt stained and torn. Sophia guided him back to his office. Rita was already there, holding a now wide-eyed Emily, who immediately reached for her mother. She okay? Rita asked, eyes flicking to Kingston's arm. He'll live, Sophia said. Barely. Later that evening, with his arm wrapped and the shock subsiding, Kingston and Sophia sat quietly in his private office. Emily played at their feet, pushing a stuffed elephant across the carpet. So what now? Sophia asked softly. Professionally, I've got to clean up this mess, rebuild trust, revisit the merger. But personally, that depends on you. Sophia turned to him. What do you mean? Kingston reached into his desk and pulled out a fresh contract. I want you to stay, permanently, head of internal audit, report directly to the board, full independence. Sophia blinked. That's huge. You've earned it, he said simply. You saw what no one else would, or dared to. Sophia took a breath. And Emily? She's got a permanent spot in the company nursery, or here. She runs this floor now anyway. A pause. And us? She asked. Kingston looked at her gently. You already know how I feel, but I want you to take your time. No pressure. Just know this wasn't just about the case for me. Sophia didn't speak immediately. Instead, she picked up Emily and held her close, watching as the little girl smiled, giggling at the toy in her hand. And for the first time in what felt like forever, Sophia believed things were finally falling into place. 6 weeks had passed since the boardroom showdown that had rocked Khalifa Innovations. The news of Eric Okoye's arrest had made headlines across London's business community. Whispers of money laundering, forged documents, and betrayal within one of the city's most respected tech empires had gripped financial circles. And through it all, Sophia Armstrong had somehow become the quiet heroine in the center of the storm. Life had not gone back to normal. Instead, it had transformed. Sophia was now officially head of internal audit, with her own sleek glass office just down the hall from Kingston's. Her days were filled with budget reviews, oversight meetings, and new accountability systems. The company's culture was shifting, slowly but surely, as transparency replaced intimidation. Every morning, she and Emily took the lift to the top floor. Rita was always there with a knowing smile and a cup of tea. The once imposing conference room now echoed with laughter, soft lullabies, and the occasional squeal from Emily, who had become something of a company mascot. But beneath the polished routines and crisp business attire, Sophia was still adjusting. One afternoon, she stood by the window of her office, staring out over Canary Wharf. London stretched out in all directions, gleaming in the spring sunlight. Emily napped peacefully in her portable cot, the same one Kingston had insisted on ordering for her corner command center mate, as he called it. "Lost in thought?" Kingston asked from the doorway, his voice low and familiar. Sophia turned, a small smile touching her lips. "Just thinking about everything, how fast things have changed." He stepped inside and closed the door behind him. "You've handled it better than most people in your position ever could." Sophia laughed softly. "I still feel like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop." "You're not alone in that," he admitted. "I'm still waiting for half the board to stop looking at me like I might suddenly walk off with the company safe." Sophia crossed her arms and leaned against the window frame. "Do you regret it, bringing me into all this?" Kingston walked over, standing beside her. "Not for a single second." She tilted her head, studying him. "Even when I doubted you? Even when I accused you of manipulation?" "I deserve that," he said with a quiet smile. "And I don't regret it, because in the end, you saved us both." They stood in silence for a beat. Then he said softly, "There's something else." Sophia glanced up, eyebrows raised. "Oh?" Kingston pulled a small envelope from his coat pocket and handed it to her. "The board wants to honor you at next month's shareholders gala. Public recognition for your role in saving the company. They want you to give a speech." Sophia paled. "A speech?" He chuckled. "Don't worry, I'll be right beside you." She opened the envelope, scanning the letter inside. It was real. Her name printed on the formal invitation, praised in glowing terms. "I don't know what to say," she murmured. "Say whatever you want," he said. "Tell your story. Tell the truth." Sophia looked up at him. "You think they're ready for that?" "I think the world could use a bit more of it." Later that evening, Sophia returned home to her flat in South Bank, now upgraded with more space, sunlight, and a kitchen that didn't leak. Emily giggled as she tried to crawl across the new rug, determined to chase a squeaky rubber duck that had rolled under the sofa. As Sophia knelt beside her, scooping her up with a smile, she caught her reflection in the glass door. She looked different now, steadier, stronger. Not just a survivor of circumstance, but someone who had chosen to rise through it. Her phone buzzed on the counter. "Kingston, hope I'm not interrupting bedtime. Thought you might like this." A moment later, an image appeared. Emily, fast asleep in the office, curled up with a stuffed fox Kingston had bought on a whim. In the background, Kingston was crouched beside her, tucking a tiny blanket over her shoulder. Sophia's heart ached. She typed back, "She really does like you, you know." "Kingston, I'm starting to suspect she's just using me for snacks." Sophia laughed and stared at the screen for a long moment. Then she typed, "She's not the only one who likes you." There was a pause. "Kingston, are you sure? After everything?" Sophia took a breath. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." The reply came instantly. "Kingston, then let's stop pretending this is only about work." That night, Sophia stood at her window while Emily slept, watching the London lights flicker in the distance. For the first time in years, she wasn't afraid of what came next. She didn't know exactly what their future would look like, but she knew one thing for certain. It would be honest, it would be earned, and it would be together. The shareholders' gala at the Royal Exchange was nothing short of majestic. The grand hall, with its marble columns and sparkling chandeliers, shimmered beneath a wash of gold lights. London's most elite had gathered, suits tailored to perfection, gowns flowing like silk waterfalls, conversations bubbling over champagne and ambition. Sophia Armstrong adjusted the strap of her elegant navy blue evening dress, the one Kingston had insisted she wear. It hugged her curves with a sophistication that made her feel like she belonged here. And tonight she did. From across the hall, Kingston Khalifa caught her eye. He was in a deep gray tuxedo, sharp and clean, but his eyes softened the moment they landed on her. He raised his glass slightly, silently encouraging her. She offered a small smile, but her nerves twisted beneath the surface. This was the first time she would speak about what had happened, publicly, not just as the woman who helped catch a corrupt CFO, but as the quiet storm that had rewritten the narrative inside one of the most powerful tech firms in the country. "Speech is in 10 minutes, Kingston said as he approached, his voice low, reassuring. "You ready?" "No," Sophia whispered honestly, "but I'm doing it anyway." "That's all courage ever is," he said, slipping his hand into hers. A few minutes later, the MC took the stage. "And now please welcome the woman whose brilliance, integrity, and quiet strength helped uncover the truth, restore order, and remind us all what leadership should look like. Miss Sophia Armstrong." Applause thundered. Sophia stepped up to the microphone, her heart pounding in her chest. The lights were warm on her skin. Dozens of eyes watched her. She glanced once at Kingston. Then she began. "When I first walked into Khalifa Innovations, I was a single mother struggling to pay for baby formula." The room went still. "I had no connections, no corporate power, just a desperate message sent to the wrong number." She paused, scanning the faces before her. That message landed in the hands of someone who didn't ignore it. He saw something and made a choice that changed everything. From the audience, Kingston's gaze didn't waver. "I didn't come here tonight to be celebrated," Sophia continued. "I came here because sometimes the most unexpected mistakes lead us to exactly where we're meant to be. I was given a chance to prove myself, and I stand here today not just because of that chance, but because I took it." Applause swelled again, this time warmer, more personal. "Integrity isn't something you hang in a frame," she concluded. "It's what you choose in silence, in fear, and in truth." When she stepped down, Kingston was already there, waiting for her at the edge of the stage. He said nothing, just wrapped an arm around her waist and pressed a soft kiss to her temple. "You were brilliant," he whispered. "I was terrified," she breathed. "Exactly," he said, smiling. "That's what made it real." The rest of the evening blurred into a mix of congratulations, toasts, and admiring glances. But later, after the lights dimmed and the crowd faded, Sophia and Kingston stood on the balcony overlooking the Thames, the night air cool against their skin. "You know what people are saying," she murmured. "That we're together?" he asked, sliding a hand down her back. "That I only got this job because of you." Kingston turned to face her fully. "You earned this job before I even knew your name. And if things hadn't worked out, if you'd been wrong about me, what then?" "I wasn't wrong." His words were firm, certain. "And if I fall," she asked softly, "then I'll catch you." Silence settled between them. Not heavy, just full. Then she leaned in and kissed him, not with hesitation, but with everything she hadn't been ready to say out loud. It was a kiss that said, "Thank you." A kiss that said, "I trust you." A kiss that said, "I want this." When they pulled apart, Kingston rested his forehead against hers. "I've loved you since the first day you stormed into my office and told me the numbers didn't make sense." Sophia laughed, her voice thick with emotion. "You're terrible at romantic lines." He grinned. "You still fell for me?" "Yes," she whispered. "I did." That night, as they rode back to her flat in silence, Emily slept peacefully in Rita's care, allowing Sophia one rare evening to simply be a woman in love. No chaos, no accounting errors, no accusations. Just the soft promise of something real, something lasting. It should have been smooth sailing from there. The gala had solidified Sophia's reputation, and the media had begun referring to her as the woman who saved Khalifa Innovations. Internally, staff morale had skyrocketed. Fraud prevention systems were being updated. Transparency was the new buzzword in every department. But peace, as Sophia was learning, rarely lasted long. One Friday morning, she arrived at the office to find Kingston's assistant, Rita, waiting at the lift, her expression uncharacteristically tense. "Good morning," Sophia said, adjusting Emily's carrier on her shoulder. "Something wrong?" Rita hesitated, then stepped inside with her. "We received a letter this morning, anonymous, sent directly to the board's general counsel." Sophia's stomach tightened. "About?" "You," Rita said gently. "More specifically, your relationship with Kingston." The lift doors opened. Sophia didn't move. "I'm sorry, love," Rita added. "We're handling it, but there's chatter that you might have influenced decisions regarding your promotion." Sophia stepped out slowly, her heart pounding. "But the board signed off on the role. I earned it." "You absolutely did," Rita said firmly. "But optics matter, and whoever sent that letter wants to make things messy." By the time Sophia reached her office, the buzz was already swirling. Her inbox had polite inquiries from legal. A senior manager from finance sent a passive-aggressive message requesting clarification on role authorizations. Even Caleb, her brother, called from HR. "They're digging, Soph," he warned, "trying to paint this like some conflict of interest scandal. You okay?" Sophia stared at her screen. "No, but I will be." That evening, after the office cleared, she walked to Kingston's suite. Emily babbled from her stroller, unaware of the tension wrapped around her mother's shoulders. Kingston stood by the window, his sleeves rolled up, tie discarded. He turned the moment she entered. "I heard," he said softly. Sophia crossed her arms. "Why didn't you tell me first?" "I only found out an hour ago," he said. "They're treating it as internal gossip for now, but you know how this works. It'll grow teeth if we let it." Sophia sighed. "So what's the plan? We hide our relationship until the merger is finalized? Pretend I'm just another staff member you nod to in the hallway?" "I would never." "Then what?" she snapped. "Because I'm the one they'll discredit first. I don't have your legacy, Kingston. I don't have power. I'm just the girl who sent a desperate text to the wrong number." Kingston stepped forward, taking her hands. "No. You're the woman who found the truth when no one else dared. The woman who stood in front of billionaires and called out a criminal. You earned everything, Sophia, with or without me." Her eyes welled up, but she blinked back the tears. "I just don't want Emily to grow up seeing her mother's integrity questioned." Kingston cupped her face gently. "Then we face this together, head on." The next morning, Kingston sent a company-wide statement from the executive desk. It was brief, clear. "In light of recent speculation, I want to publicly acknowledge my personal relationship with Miss Sophia Armstrong. Transparency is the cornerstone of our company. I will recuse myself from any further executive discussions involving Miss Armstrong's department, and an independent audit will be conducted to verify all internal promotions and performance reviews related to her role." It was bold and risky, but it worked. The audit came back spotless. Sophia's work stood on its own. The numbers didn't lie, just like she never had. Still, the days that followed were hard. The stares, the whispers, the unspoken tension in the air. But slowly it began to fade. One afternoon, as Sophia walked into a meeting, one of the senior partners, An older woman who had never said more than a polite good morning stood up and gestured toward the seat beside her. "You're braver than most," she said quietly, "and better at your job than half this building." Sophia blinked in surprise. "Keep your head high," the woman added. "We need more like you." Later that evening, Sophia sat with Kingston on the roof garden of his home in Primrose Hill. Emily played with her stuffed elephant, crawling between their chairs under the stars. "She's going to remember this," Kingston said, watching the baby. "What, corporate politics and crisis management?" Sophia teased. "No, that her mother never bowed to fear, that she demanded her place and didn't apologize for it." Sophia leaned against him, exhaling. "I don't need public approval, but I do need peace." "And you'll have it," Kingston said. "We're not there yet, but we're getting close." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a tiny velvet box. Her breath caught, but he didn't open it. "Not yet. I'm not proposing," he said with a grin. "Not tonight. But when I do, I want you to already know the answer." Sophia's smile widened, her heart lighter than it had been in weeks. "You already know it," she whispered. And under the London sky, with the past behind them and the future stretching wide, peace finally felt possible. 6 months later, everything had changed, and yet somehow everything had stayed beautifully the same. Sophia Armstrong walked through the sleek hallways of Khalifa Innovations with a kind of ease she hadn't known she could possess. Staff nodded with genuine respect. Interns watched her in quiet awe. Executives listened when she spoke, and not just because of what she'd uncovered, but because of how she handled everything after. She hadn't just earned a position. She'd built a legacy. Emily was now a toddler, taking her first wobbly steps in the executive wing like she owned it. Rita swore the child would be running board meetings by age 3. Kingston, ever steady, had returned to full leadership after the board completed its restructuring. The company had weathered the storm and emerged stronger, and his public faith in Sophia had only deepened the loyalty around him. Together they had become something more than just a headline couple. They were a story, a testament to what could happen when the right person came into your life at the exact wrong time. That evening, Sophia arrived home to their renovated townhome in Chelsea, a warm, elegant space filled with soft light, bookshelves lined with financial guides and children's books, and the faint scent of vanilla and eucalyptus in the air. Emily squealed from the living room, waddling toward her as soon as she stepped in. "Mama!" Sophia scooped her up and kissed her cheek. "How's my brilliant girl?" "She tried to eat a crayon again," Kingston called from the kitchen, where he stood barefoot in gray joggers, stirring a pot of stew. "She's exploring," Sophia defended with a smile, setting her daughter on her hip. "She's experimenting with the wrong color palette," he replied, but his voice was soft and amused. Later, they sat at the dining table, Emily asleep upstairs, jazz humming faintly in the background. Kingston reached for Sophia's hand across the table. "You've barely looked at your emails this week. Something wrong?" Sophia gave a slow smile. "Actually, something right. I got the offer." His brow lifted. "From the Financial Accountability Commission?" She nodded. "They want me to join the review panel. A 6-month term, 1 day a week. That's huge, Soph." "I know," she said, "and I want to do it. But I also want to be here, with you, with Emily. So I'll take it, just slowly." Kingston leaned back, watching her with admiration. "I never knew a wrong number could lead to all this." Sophia laughed. "I still think about that moment, how easily you could have ignored it. Just another random text." "I think about it too," he said softly. "How one moment of connection, however unexpected, can change everything." She stood, walked over, and slipped onto his lap, his arms wrapped around her instinctively. "You changed everything for me, Kingston," she whispered. "You didn't just offer me a job. You gave me space to be myself again." He kissed her shoulder. "You gave me something even greater, something I thought I'd lost forever." She pulled back slightly. "What's that?" "Hope," he said simply. a reason to believe in something beyond work and responsibility. They stayed like that, quiet and content, wrapped in the comfort of hard-won peace. The next morning, Sophia woke early. She moved carefully so as not to wake Kingston, then padded down the hallway to Emily's room. The baby stirred in her cot, blinking up at her mother with a sleepy grin. Sophia lifted her, cradled her close, and carried her to the window. Outside, London shimmered, gray skies tinged with golden streaks, buses humming below. The city beginning its day. Sophia whispered into Emily's curls. "You don't remember how hard it was, but I do, and every day I thank God that we got through it." Emily babbled back, nuzzling her mother's neck. Later that day, Sophia stood on the rooftop terrace of Khalifa Innovations, watching the wind catch the London Eye in the distance. Kingston joined her with 2 mugs of coffee. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "That sometimes," she replied, "the life you think is over is actually just beginning." He handed her the second mug. "And sometimes the biggest mistakes are the first steps towards something extraordinary." She looked over at him. "Is this our something extraordinary?" "No," Kingston said, eyes locked on hers. "This is just the beginning." 1 year later, the Khalifa Foundation launched its first initiative, a scholarship program for single mothers pursuing degrees in accounting and finance. Sophia Armstrong stood at the podium in a sleek cream dress, a subtle gold pin on her collar that bore the foundation's new logo, a stylized number 1 coiled gently into the shape of a heart. Behind her sat Kingston Khalifa, dapper as ever, holding Emily on his lap. The little girl was now walking confidently, waving at the guests in her soft pink dress, a toy calculator clutched in one tiny hand. The event was being streamed live across multiple platforms. It was a full-circle moment for Sophia, a woman who had once watered down baby formula and prayed for a miracle, now giving one back. "I stand here today," she said, her voice steady but emotional, "because a stranger responded to a text I sent by mistake." Soft laughter rippled through the crowd. "That stranger didn't just offer me kindness. He offered me a job. He gave me dignity. He didn't ask me to shrink, to apologize for my circumstance, or prove myself twice as much to deserve a little help. He saw me, and I found the courage to see myself again." Kingston's eyes never left her face. "We often talk about merit," she continued, "but merit doesn't exist in a vacuum. Opportunity matters, support matters, and belief, someone else's belief in you, can sometimes become the bridge between despair and destiny." Applause swelled. Sophia stepped back, nodding to the next speaker. As she walked off stage, Kingston rose to meet her, Emily now asleep on his shoulder. "You were perfect," he whispered, kissing her cheek. "I didn't cry this time," she replied with a proud smile. Progress. They moved to a quiet corner of the rooftop garden, away from cameras and guests. Just the 3 of them beneath the wide London sky. The air was crisp, the city humming far below. "Do you ever think about that day?" she asked. "The text?" Kingston smiled. "Every single day. I still wonder what would have happened if I had double-checked the number." "You'd have figured things out, Sophia. You always do." She reached for his hand. "Maybe, but I wouldn't have found you." He turned fully toward her, brushing a curl from her cheek. "And I wouldn't have found the 2 people who make my life feel like home." A pause settled between them, thick with the weight of everything they'd survived. Then Kingston pulled a small velvet box from his jacket pocket. But this time, he didn't hesitate. He opened it. Inside sat a simple ring. Gold, delicate, timeless. No extravagance, just intention. "Sophia Armstrong," he said softly, "you walked into my life because of a mistake, but you became the best decision I ever made. I don't want another day to pass without calling you my wife. Will you marry me?" Tears welled in her eyes instantly, but her voice was sure. Yes. He slipped the ring on her finger, and she kissed him, gently, joyfully, completely. From somewhere in the garden, someone clapped. Then more followed. The ripple of celebration wrapped around them, but Sophia barely noticed. In that moment, there was only Kingston's warmth, Emily's quiet breathing, and the sound of her heart finally settling into peace. Later that night, after they put Emily to bed and the house was still, Sophia curled beside Kingston on their couch, her head on his chest. "I don't believe in accidents anymore," she murmured. "No, I believe in purpose, in timing, in the idea that sometimes the universe sends us exactly what we need, just not always the way we expect." Kingston ran his hand along her arm. "Even if it comes in the form of a desperate text sent to the wrong number?" Sophia smiled, eyes closed. "Especially then." And so, in a city of millions, two souls who weren't meant to cross paths did, and in doing so, built a life anchored in truth, love, and one simple reminder. Sometimes the wrong number is exactly the right one. Dear viewers, what lesson did you take away from this dramatic tale? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below.